Huffman are out. Well, I say out. They're out of the country. They're in Nigeria on a missions trip right now. So he asked me to minister this morning. And so got a few things I wanted to talk about. How many of you know, like, that feeling, like, right about, like, before you're about to throw up and you start having, like, you get real cold? And, yeah, that's kind of what and you kind of, hands start sweating and all that. Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like right now, because I feel like I'm about to, like, throw up on all of you. So let it go. All right. I'll just, okay, so I don't feel like I'm going to throw up, but it's just that nervousness, I guess. But I know it'll be going in here in a couple minutes. So, all right. So Monty gave a very good introduction. I talked to him the other day about how the stuff that he was talking about on Wednesday goes right along with what I'm going to be talking about, because it's the same kind of stuff. I don't know if it's everybody's been kind of going through this, but it's like you just feel like you've had enough. Like, I'm tired of the same old stuff. I'm tired of just everything. You know, it's like everything. It's kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but I don't know. I was just to that point in myself, and I know a lot of people have been talking about it, just tired, like, even with ministry stuff. It's just like, sometimes you feel like, I'm tired of this. You know, it's like, those of you in ministry, you know what I'm talking about. You kind of just, after a while, sometimes you get burned out, and you're looking for God to kind of just reignite something inside of you, and it's like, it's not happening, you know. So, that's kind of where I was, especially like these last few weeks. And then I was at work on Monday morning, just telling God, like, what's going on, because I feel like I'm at this place where I don't really care if I mean, if the only point of my life was to get these boys here or something, I'm ready to go. You know, kind of like Elijah was saying, like, I don't know what's left for me, you know, basically, like. And I would be fine with that, you know, if that's what you want to do. And that's kind of the point where I was mentally. Not like I'm going to go take my life or anything, but it's like, Lord, whatever you want. You know, I'm kind of just tired. You know, I'm tired of helping people. I'm tired of, you know, always being responsible for all the stuff. And, you know, do y'all know what I'm saying? You know, and I guess it's just life, you know. So that's kind of where I was. Well, I was there last Sunday, to be honest with you. I was here, but that's where I was. So, yeah, okay. So if y'all are going through that, just know that happens to everybody. Okay. So, and there is hope beyond that. Okay. So, all right. So, Monday morning, that's where I was just sitting at work, like, Lord, what do you want me to do? Like, what's next? And he brought to my remembrance something that, y'all remember, Rebecca's dad, Pastor Darrell? Okay. Back a while back, he had talked about when he was at that point, and it just kind of came back to my memory. He was at that point of he didn't want to have nothing to do with ministry anymore. He was done. He was just tired, worn out. He talked about pastoral abuse and all that kind of stuff, just people taking advantage of him and all this stuff. And I'm not saying that was happening to me, but I remember him talking about that. And he got to the point, and he said he was sitting in his chair in the living room, and God spoke this verse. It's actually in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 38, and it says, "But my righteous one will live by faith, and I take no pleasure in the one who shrinks back." Yeah. If he shrinks back, I will not be pleased with him. And so, you know, that kind of hit me, like, you know, and it's not that don't believe in God anymore. It's not that I just hate God and I want to turn away, you know, or, you know, chasing after sin. That's really not what it is. It's just, I kind of realized I'm really not living by faith. I'm living by whatever comes at me, you know, and so, you know, just trying to respond, you know, naturally, and it's just not working. I kind of realized, even back there, I was thinking about it. We get frustrated and wore out because we're not living by faith. We're not expecting anything. We're not expecting God to come through. We're kind of really more expecting just whatever comes at us, we just hope it goes away, and we're not really doing anything. We're not expecting God to come through. So I wanted to go, if you back up to verse 35, Hebrews 10:35, and I thought I pulled this out of the NIV, but it's not exactly the same. I'll just read it off my paper, but it says, "So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised." So verse 37, "In just a little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay." And this is where he says, "And but my righteous one will live by faith, and I will take no pleasure in the one who shrinks back." Is that how it's worded up there? Well, it's similar. It says, but verse 39, "But we do not belong to those who shrink back and are destroyed, but to those who have faith and are saved." So I was still looking at that. It says, go back to verse 38. It says, "But my righteous one will live by faith, and if he shrinks back, I will not be pleased with him." That's even talking about with Jesus. When he was on the earth, he was to live by faith. And if he would have shrunk back and not lived by faith, the Father would have not had pleasure in him. You look at Jesus' life, everything he did by faith. He was doing things that everybody else wasn't doing. So to me, like living by faith, I don't know if you say got a revelation of it or whatever, but in everything that I do, I kind of realized I have to put expectation on it. I can't just keep roaming through life and just taking whatever comes at me and just act like I can't do nothing about it. I realize that even like in my relationships and just in every area of life, you have to expect God to come through. And you can't just take what's coming at you. Does that make sense? Okay. So how do you do that? You speak God's word on it. Because that's the one thing that we know. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. And his word is truth. So if we put his word on it, we have to trust in his word. Okay? So what I have today, if you want to put a title on it, and I'm going to try to keep it short. I've got 17 points. But they're going to go quick, I promise you. Because I don't have a lot to talk about them. They're just points for you to write down and one thing, and Rebecca talked about Elijah back, whatever day that was, and Monty mentioned Elijah, and I'm going to mention him just real quick because the thing when y'all remember right before he went back, when right before God took him back, and Elisha was going to succeed him right as the next prophet. What did he ask him? Elisha asked him for a double portion. Y'all remember that? My mouth is dry. Got to get a drink here. All right, so that double portion, and what was his response back to that? Y'all remember? Elijah said, "You ask a hard thing." And I to me I guess what I saw in that was that he wasn't saying that it was a hard thing for God to do. He wasn't saying that, well, you're asking a lot because I'm, God. So the weight that I carry is a heavy weight. I'm ready to get out of here. So if you want double of that responsibility, double that weight, you're asking for a hard thing. Does that make sense? So I'm just letting you know, anybody that's in ministry or that wants to be in ministry, you're asking for a hard thing. Okay? Because it's not easy. It might look easy, I don't know. Like I said, I could throw up all over you right now if you want. But actually, this is actually the easiest part is up here. It's all the other stuff, and it's all the spiritual stuff that you deal with. So I remember back when we were younger, and Rebecca's dad was telling us, because he grew up in ministry. He was in ministry all his life. And he always said, if God allows you to do anything else, do it. But only go into ministry if you know that's what God called you to do, because it's hard. It is a hard thing. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring that out. We're going to be talking. Oh, the title of this today is what to expect when you're expecting. Okay? Y'all know that's like, it's a book, right? It's a book based on, for women who are about to have a baby. And so you read that book so you kind of get a good idea of what you're going to be experiencing, what's going to be coming up, how your body's going to be changing and that kind of stuff when you're expecting a child, right? When you're expecting a baby. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And what we're going to be doing is going through the book of Hebrews. We're going to start Hebrews, not the book of Hebrews, but chapter 11 in faith. Okay, y'all know that's the faith chapter. 11:1. We're going to be going through basically verse 31. And as I was just looking through this, I was reading through it, and God just started pointing little things out to me. This is what you can expect. But before we get to that, where am I at on my time here? Got a time clock back there? All right. I asked Mr. May if he would teach for me last Sunday, and he said he would only go about 5 minutes. So I said, that's even better. But then he respectfully declined. So now you got me. So anyway, just a few notes on faith before we get into this, because I want to kind of set a foundation. I know we know about faith. We've been teaching faith. We've been talking about this stuff for a while. But just for the sake of this message, I want to just clear some things up. Okay, so the Bible says God has given every man, the measure of faith. Every person has faith, right? So when we read in the Bible where it talks about living by faith, it's talking specifically about faith in God, faith in our Creator, faith in our Father, right? So just to be clear, everyone on the planet, regardless of what they believe, they live by faith. It's just faith in what? Okay? It's what they have faith in that determines, where their faith is and how they're living. So, you look at a person, even an atheist, they have a strong conviction of faith that there is nothing. Right? That's where their faith lies. So we as Christians, we believe faith in God. We trust Him, His Word. That's where our faith is. Other people, different religions and stuff, that's where their faith is. So they live according to that, right? They discipline themselves according to that. So, okay, so everyone lives by faith, just in different things. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to look at Hebrews 11:1. And it says, now faith, and I'm sure y'all know, everybody knows the scriptures. But now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Y'all have heard that before, right? Okay, so just a real quick summary of faith. What is faith? Well, we know faith, because a lot of times we refer to faith as belief. And it's half belief, but also faith without works is dead, right? So it's faith and action working together. It's belief and action working together. So faith is your belief in action. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now hope is another one that we got confused with, because our idea of hope is worldly hope. That's and that's just wishful thinking. Well, I hope this happens. Well, that's just wishful thinking. There's no expectation on it. There's no I don't know if I really believe this, but I hope I win the lottery. Right? I'm just going to, and we put our faith on that, and we put that ticket, we buy that ticket, and, most of the time, nothing happens. All right? If y'all win, let me know so I can, I'm your Uncle Bob. Right? Okay? So I'm not trying to be funny, y'all. I'm just trying to get this word across here. Okay, so I really didn't think I was, okay, anyway. So biblical hope, that the definition of actually, when we see hope in the Bible, it's talking about confident expectation. In other words, I know this is going to happen. I am confident that God is going to come through. That's what hope is, and I think we kind of thought that's what faith was. But faith is when you act on your hope. Faith is your life based on hope. Based on your hope. So if I have this confident expectation that God is going to come through, then I'm going to act like it. And I'm going to live like that. I'm not going to do things that's going to contradict what I'm saying my hope is in. Does that make sense? Okay, so So if my hope is my confident expectation, my faith is how I live out that confident expectation. Okay? So, all right, so faith is your belief in action. Okay? Hope is not just wishful thinking. Y'all got that? All right. Okay, so your faith requires action. And, I'm sorry, kids. Are we doing children's church today? Did they already left? Okay, good. Because I'm going to be talking about some things here, and parents, cover their ears if you're concerned. But talking about what to expect when you're expecting. So obviously things go along with that in the natural. Right. So, okay, and I'm just going to mention some things real quick here, and then we're going to move on. But talking about, when you're expecting, you can't start expecting until conception takes place. Okay? Does that make sense? So a woman who is trying to get pregnant but is not pregnant yet is not expecting. Y'all following me? You can't say you're expecting until you've conceived. Okay? You following me? Okay, so you can't start expecting until conception takes place. Until then, you're just trying. Okay, so now spiritually, on the spiritual side of things, conception takes place in your heart through the Word of God. And that faith, when you finally conceive the Word of God in your heart, that means you accepted it. And you've taken it as truth, and you've decided, this is what I'm going to live by. Until that happens in your heart, you might still have doubt in your head. You might question things in your head, but in your heart, the way you're living out, that's going to determine where your faith is. So then if it's conceived in your heart, then you can say that you're in faith. You can say you're expecting something when it's in your heart. Does that make sense? Okay, so until then, you're just trying. So you might be in that place where you said, I've tried that. I've tried, going to church. Or I've tried, doing what the Bible says. But if you're just trying, then you're not expecting. You're just trying it out. You're just trying something out. If you go try on clothes, you haven't bought them yet. You haven't made that sacrifice. You haven't paid the cost. You haven't done what's required to take it home and make it yours. All right? So you're just trying the clothes on to see if you think they might fit, right? Okay, so I don't know if that's a good example, but okay, so it just popped in my head. So, okay, so again, you're just trying until conception takes place. Stop laughing at me, Roderick. All right, so again here, even we're going to talk natural, and then we're going to carry it over into the spiritual. Okay, so you might be going through the motions, talking about when you're trying. A couple, we're going to use the example of a young married couple, okay, that are trying to have a baby. Okay, they might be going through the motions, okay, but if you pull back before the seed is sown, conception can't take place. Okay, does that make sense? Children in the dark? Okay, don't know what's going on. Okay. All right, so does that make sense? So in your spiritual life, in your faith walk, you might be going through the motions. You're coming to church. You're praying. You're in your head. You think you've got it all together sometimes, But if your walk doesn't match the image that you're putting out, I'm talking about what's in your heart. If what's in your heart keeps, if it's not there and you haven't made a decision to, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to function in my life. And it's going to be based on God's word. If that hasn't happened, you're pulling back. And every time you kind of get to that point where it seems like you're going to break through that wall, it's like, I don't think so. And you kind of, how many of y'all have been there? It's like you kind of get there, you kind of start going down that road, and you feel like you're getting it. And then it's like you get tired or whatever. And it's like, you can't just seem to get past that point. And it's because you have no expectation that God's actually going to do what he said. And you don't have expectation because it's not conceived in your heart. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So you have to get to that point where it's conceived. And I'm spending a lot of time on this. Okay, so, another thing, you're either pulling back or you've come into agreement with a contraceptive, which is making your heart infertile. Okay? So, and that kind of stuff is like, on the spiritual side, is like stuff like, well, that's great, but I don't think that's for me. That's just not who I am, or that's not how I am. I can't do that. That's the kind of stuff that we've come into agreement about ourselves, that we don't expect God to do what he said, because I don't feel like I can do that. That's great for Elijah. That's great that Jesus did. Believe it, or do you not believe it? Because what we believe is how we're going to base our life, how we're going to live things out. Expecting, like I said before, like it's conceived. So now you're in a different place now. You're not just trying anymore. All right, we're going to read verse 2 and number 1. If you're taking notes, number 1, what you can expect. You can expect God to make something out of nothing. Okay, because a lot of times by faith, right? Okay, so that's what he's saying. You can expect God to make something out of nothing. Okay? He called us to do. Okay? All right, so that doesn't mean necessarily that you're good, a lot of times, okay, we try to, especially nowadays, magically appear in your driveway. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about popping things out of midair and all this kind of stuff. Okay? Now, if your faith is that you are, but I guess it is possible for God to just magically appear a car out of nowhere, but I can't say that that's going to happen. We're going to go, let's go down to verse 4. Actually, let's jump to verse 5. Verse 4 talks about Cain and Abel and stuff like that. Did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. So number 2 is that you can expect, when you're in faith, you can expect whatever, it doesn't make a difference. You might be happy for a time, but there's nothing better on the inside of you than knowing that your life, that the way you're living is pleasing God. Okay? And the only way to do that is by faith. Okay? By faith, he pleased God. Okay? Because look at the next verse. Verse 6. You jumped ahead there. Go back to verse 6. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. All right? Okay. So, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. It's about living by faith. Well, it's kind of connected to what you do because faith requires action. But you get what I'm saying. It's about what am I doing according to my faith. That's what's going to please God. I have to live according to my faith. Okay? So, that brings us to number 3. Number 3 is you can expect to be rewarded. In our hearts, we want to be rewarded. Right? Deep inside of us, we feel like we should be rewarded. And that's one of those things that we get frustrated about. Because we're human. And he's telling us. Let's go to verse 7. It says, by faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of righteousness that comes by faith. Okay, so thinking back, remember what Noah did? God told him to build the ark, right? And where was Noah at that time? Was he? When you're living by faith, sometimes God is going to tell you things, and he's going to tell you to do something that makes no sense in the natural based on what you're looking at. Because I'm sure Noah, at this point, I'm sure you've heard this before, but Noah, he's going to be like, Lord, are you sure? Like, boat's going in the water, right? I mean, why am I going to build a boat here in the middle of... He knew what God told him, and he acted on it. So that's why he was in faith, okay? So you can expect God to tell you to do things that make no sense. This is what to expect when you're expecting, right? So it's not always good things. Sometimes it's things that's like, right? Look in the natural, when you're pregnant, right, ladies? When you're expecting, is everything that happens to you good? Right? Everything that the book tells you, what to expect when you're expecting, it's not all happy stuff, right? There's going to be some stretching going on, but you got to know God's voice. Okay, so I'm trying to move quickly here because we got 17 of these things, like I said, and we're going. How long have we been going? What's our time back there? 5 minutes? No, I don't believe that. All right, let's go to the next one. We're on verse number 8, right? By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Okay, so number 5 is you to somebody to associate with, like you don't know anybody here, and you feel alone sometimes. Okay, all right. Let's go to verse 10. I told you we're going to go through these quick, so I don't have time. All right, so but I got 17, so that makes up for it. All right. So, for he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And he, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and as countless as the sand on the seashore. Okay, so number 7 is that you can expect to birth things when you thought it was too late. All right, so you can expect to birth things when you thought it was too late. Now, how many of you, there might be something in your life where you think, maybe God might be telling me to do this, but it's too late. I'm either too old or I'm too something. You're basing it on yourself. And it's kind of a selfish thought, right, to say that I can't do what. Okay, so he's not going to tell you to do something and you're just not capable of doing it, without him. You can expect God to birth things through you that you thought you were either too old or you're too young or you're not good enough or whatever, okay, because we all suffer with that mentality of I can't. And it's that expectation. We have to conceive that word in our heart that says I can. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had received the promise was about to sacrifice his one and only son. Okay, number 8 on our list is that you can expect to make hard sacrifices. Okay, when you're expecting, a lot of times God will require you to make a sacrifice, something that's hard. Now, I'm not talking about your child. Don't go to kill your children, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, even in this situation, even though he said he wanted, his son as a sacrifice, in the end, he didn't actually require his son. He just wanted Abraham's heart, right? So you can expect sometimes when you're expecting, when you're in faith, there's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made. And a lot of times it could involve family members. It could involve jobs. It could involve all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, just us personally, me and Rebecca, we've made a lot of hard decisions, and based on faith, based on what we felt God was telling us to do. I don't know how many times we've moved and left things and done different things based on what we felt God was telling us to do. And there were some things that got sacrificed in that process. So I can speak from experience on that. There's going to be things when you're walking by faith that you're going to have to sacrifice. All right? Okay. Let's go on to the next one. We're going to look at verse 18 and 19. Even though God said to him, still talking about Abraham, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead, and figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. And that's true because when God told Abraham to offer his son Isaac, in his head, Abraham's like, okay, point of killing him and making that sacrifice, but then God said, hold on, I got you, you're good. I'm going to provide a ram for you right there. So in that situation, y'all remember right before he was about to make that sacrifice, he said no, and then he provided a ram, right? They sacrificed the ram instead. Okay, so you can expect God to provide. Okay? And that's another thing that we fight with in our minds, because we don't really believe a lot of times that God's got us. We feel alone, we feel neglected, we feel like, based on things that are coming at us, that He's just not going to do it. That's a corrupted seed that's been planted in our heart, and it's a lot of times it's through religion that happens, that you can't expect God to come through for you, but you can. Okay, I'm telling you, you can. Okay, so you can expect God to provide. Again, you have to be expecting it. You have to be. Hold on, let me read it again. This is what to expect when you're expecting, right? So, in other words, you've already conceived it in your heart. Okay, so as he leaned on top of his staff, by faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions about his bones. So he blessed all of his descendants, and he even gave instructions on what to do when it happens. Okay, so number 10 is that you can expect to bless future generations. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, God put us in this time period that we're in right now for a reason, whether we believe it or not. And there was a lot of generations that came before us, and there's going to be a lot of generations that come after us. Okay? I mean, I don't know when Jesus is coming back or anything, but, we can just assume that that's how it's going to be. And so you can expect, when you're expecting God, when you're living a life of faith, you can expect to bless future generations. It doesn't have to be that keeps coming on. You know what I'm saying? Okay? All right, so you can take care of that yourself and stop the mess, okay, if you choose to do so. All right, so you can bless future generations. Let's go to verse 23. And this one has 2 points, so you can get excited about that. All right. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born, because they saw he was no ordinary child. And when they were not, can't talk. And they were not afraid of the king's edict. Okay? So, number 11. All right, y'all know we're more than halfway there now. So, all right, if you got a roast in the oven, make sure you invite me over. And, but you'll be okay. All right. So, number 11, you can expect supernatural protection. This is another one of those things that people are like, maybe not. Because for one reason, we haven't really seen it. So we struggle with the things that we haven't seen before. And we feel like it's not really, even though God said it, led that by His Spirit. He led that basket where it needed to go. To me, that's supernatural protection. He saved his life, because it could have been real easy for, a wave to come or whatever in that river. We think, I guess in my mind, it's just a gentle stream. This was the Nile River. This is a big river, okay? It's got currents. It got stuff going around. It could have got sucked in a whirlpool. It could have, something could have came and knocked it over, and he would have just dumped in the river. There's stuff that could have happened, right? But God led that basket where it needed to go to protect him, okay? All right, so that the Israelite people, they were getting too big. It was too many of them. So every boy that's born, you take him and throw him in the river. That's to get rid of him, kill him. As soon as he's born, if it's a boy, take it directly to the river, throw it in the river, and because there's too many of them. Okay, but it says that they were not afraid of the king's edict, right? So they kept him. And so number 2 predicts what God's law is, what God's word says. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so you can expect to overcome fear and be courageous. Okay, let's go to verse 24. It says, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Okay, y'all remember, even though Pharaoh's daughter took him in, it says that he refused to be known as part of their family. And it says, so number 13 says, you can expect to not have called you or what they put on you. Even parents, maybe we had parents that said, you're going to be like this, and you're never going to be worth anything, or stuff like that. That's sad, but the sad part about that is when that child accepts it. Because no matter what they say, you still have that choice of not to accept it. But once that child accepts it and it's conceived in their heart that I'm not going to be worth anything, That's where the trouble is. Okay? So Moses, even though they said, okay, well, you're part of the king's family. You're this and you're that. You're with us. He refused to accept that identity because he knew, well, let's go to the next verse. He chose to be, I would rather be mistreated along with people of God than enjoy sin, for a short time. Because y'all know sin eventually is going to result in death. And that's one of the things that, looking back, when I'm, going through that situation like I was talking about earlier, like these last few weeks, it's like, man, if I really wanted to, I could go and do something stupid, and because I'm feeling it, right? Because I feel like I don't want to do this anymore or whatever. And honestly, what keeps me from just going off and doing a bunch of stupid stuff is the word that's been sown in me for the last 20 years. I've got enough word in me that I know if I go do this, if I go do something stupid, it's going to come back and haunt me. Sin is always going to take advantage of you. There's no negotiating with the enemy. Okay, so I know that if I choose this, if I go do this, it's going to be worse for me because it's a trap. I know it's a trap. I know these thoughts. It's a trap. I know it is. And there's not. I thank God for the people that God put in my life, the ministers and the ministry that I've received, even as when I was young, that I know better. And so to just throw it all away. I'm not saying I'm going to throw it all away. I know that God's always going to forgive me for whatever happens, but there's going to be consequences with the stuff that I do. So, wanting to get out, if you resist them, they will pass. Okay? It's going to pass. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Whenever you're going through that stuff, those feelings will pass eventually. Okay? You might be at the out in faith. I wasn't declaring things. I wasn't doing what I needed to do to combat the things that were coming at me. I was just letting them happen. And so what's happened to you? I'm not saying people don't mistreat you. I'm not saying people didn't do you wrong, but you have a choice in the matter to determine how you're going to take it. Okay? If you let it get to you and you don't combat it with God's word, it's just going to keep eating away at you. Okay? Does that make sense? So you have to make a choice to do something about it and to act in faith. It sounds crazy. It's because I'm not expecting God to do anything. And so when you make that change and you expect God to start doing something and you start speaking things out, and I know it works, but I don't know why I get to these points sometimes where it's like, I feel like it's just not going to work. And it's the enemy messing with your head. That's what it is. So, okay, I kind of got off track. But I don't even know where I was. Well, that was at verse 25. We're almost done, okay? Let y'all go home and eat roast with me. Okay. Verse 25, we're going to go through 26. Because he saw him who is invisible. All right, so the next one, I think this is number 14, right? It says you can expect to persevere in the face of adversity. Okay, now adversity is one of those things that we get confused about because we think, well, if it's if the enemy's coming at me, then I must be doing something wrong. And a lot of times that's not the case. It means you're doing something right. So when that adversity comes, that's what builds your character. That's what makes you push through and get to that point. That's like what I was talking about earlier. When I finally stood up and raised up within myself and started declaring some things, even though I felt nothing, I'm telling you, I was at the point where it's like, Lord, whatever. In your heart, and you actually start to act on that, it changes your perspective. It changes the way you see things, and because you start actually expecting God to come through. So, anyway, expect to persevere in the face of adversity, and sometimes in the face of adversity. Let's go to verse 28 and 29. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land. But when the Egyptians tried to... You're backed into that corner. You feel threatened. Lord, where do I go from here? So you can expect God to deliver you from the enemy even when it seems impossible. He will make a way out when it seems like there's, I mean, that's a song, right? Or, you know, it's one of those religious sayings, you know, but he will make a way when there seems to be no way, right? So, but it's true, though. I mean, he will, okay? So, let's go to the next one. Verse 30. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the people marched around them for 7 days. Okay? So 16, and we're almost there, people. We're almost there. We're on number 16. It says, I wrote it. Number 16, it saith, you can expect walls to fall and barriers to be broken. Now, I've said it before, I said it earlier. You get to that point where you feel like you're pushing up against a wall, whether it's in your spiritual life or whatever, or just you're dealing with stuff, and it's like, I can't get past this point. You can expect, when you're walking in faith, when you're making those declarations, when you're actually doing what he said to do, you can expect those walls to fall and those barriers to be broken. All right? A lot of times, we come up to that wall, and it looks big, and we just turn around and walk away because it looks too big for us. I can't get past this. This thing that happened to me when I was younger, or this thing that happened to me a couple years ago, every time I think about it, I just get down into this pit again, and it's like I can't move past this because it's just too big. I messed up, or they messed me up, or whatever. And if you keep that same attitude, you're going to stay in that same cycle, in that same pit. You have to be able to walk in faith and declare things and see yourself getting past it. If you never see yourself getting past it and rising above it, you won't. Okay? You got to have that vision for the future. Okay? Let's go to the next one. The last one here that I wrote. Let's go to verse 31. It says, by faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. Okay, so number 17 is that you can expect peace and safety in the midst of battle. So you're going through it, right? You're going through a bunch of mess. Maybe you created it, maybe you didn't. Doesn't matter. The thing is that when you're going through it, just like, because she did something that was good, right? She helped out the people of God. The two spies that came, she protected them, she hid them out, and she let them go freely. But she got a reward in return, right? When the battle was going on, she was protected. And she knew that she was safe because of what she did. So she acted in faith, and she got rewarded for it. Okay, does that make sense? So we can expect that peace and safety even though their battle is going on all around us. Okay, does that make sense? And let's just look at verse 32 real quick. It says, and what more shall I say? So that's where I'm ending. So what more do I need to say? So we got 17 points, right? So we got 17 things of what we can expect when we're expecting, right? And like I said before, it's, sometimes it's a hard thing, right? It's a hard thing, the stuff you're going through. It's a hard thing, but don't throw away your confidence. Back in Hebrews 10:35, you don't have to go there, but it says, do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. Okay, y'all understand that? All right, we good? We good? That's all I got. If y'all want to stand up.